Hey, good afternoon, it's Sabine. If you haven't watched the previous two videos, I recommend you do because this is going to build on that set of videos. It covers the time frame of September 3rd to September 7th, the start of the Pentecost Feast of New Oil, which I believe is Pentecost fully come on September 5th, and one day later, the Pentecost wood offerings. And we know this so specifically because it is marked on the Assyrian calendar. We also covered the celestial signs from September 5th onward. And today I found another confirmation, both within the blood moons, but also the eclipses of 2021 also point exactly to this time frame. So on September 5th, if we look at the heavens, and we can already foresee that in the astronomical relay of the heavens, that is so amazing that God has made that available to us. We see a double birthing picture in the constellation Virgo. And Virgo is the constellation which is associated with this month, the month of Elul, the month of the harvest, but also the month that the king is in the field, meaning he's not in his palace, he's among us, he is readily approachable. And the September 5th double birthing will take place in Virgo first, the planet Venus we shared, and then the asteroid Vesta. And at that same time, the moon will exit the constellation Cancer, the cattle fold. The bride will then pass under the rod of inspection, where our works will be tried. So the Lord is that door of the cattle fold. And then the moon will enter through the eastern gate, the sickle stars, the head stars of Leo. And that is a marking, once again, of the start of the end times harvest. And this is the new element I found today. That is September 6th and 7th is the midpoint of the solar eclipses this year. And Israel's fall feast may be turned into mourning. We read about that in Amos 8:10. It is also marked by the blood moon tetrad in 2014 and 15. And the midpoint of that blood moon tetrad also falls on this weekend. So September 7th, we covered Vesta, the asteroid Vesta, for the representation for the Vestal virgins, the rapture maidens. That is going to be birthed out of Virgo as well. And meanwhile, the sun, the bridegroom and lawgiver, is still between Shiloh's feet. Genesis 49, 9-11. And then the moon will be gathered unto Shiloh, just like the prophecy details. And I believe this is so on point that I'm invested in this weekend. I'm hopeful. And of course, we cannot know for certain what will happen, but I believe this is worthwhile to share with you. So I'm going to recap briefly the moon forming the double harvest picture. The sickle stars of Leo, we covered that. Then Venus and Spica, the righteous branch. So Venus, the beloved David type, is going to meet up with the star Spica, representing the first fruits. And it was also the star that marked the birth of Jesus Christ. And we find a reference of that bride, that David bride type, and the branch star. We find that in Jeremiah 23:5. And in Isaiah 4:2. You can read more about that in the article. And then Vesta, 2 days later, Vesta will be birthed. The planet, the dwarf planet, Sirius, which is the grain brought forth, or Jesus brought forth, that is positioned in the constellation Taurus, in the Hyades cluster. And to me, that speaks strongly of Jesus as the king being in the field, surrounded by his congregated believers and being readily accessible. The planet is connected to Passover, and it conjuncted with that star Spica that Venus is conjuncting with this weekend during that blood moon tetrad, we're going to talk about in a minute. So the blood moon tetrad marked that midpoint, which is this weekend as well, but the asteroid Ceres was involved in that alignment of the first blood moon of the tetrad, April 15th, 2014. And then I forgot the Perseus sparkles. There's a meteor shower, and the beautiful picture underneath the meteor shower is that of Perseus, the breaker and waymaker. So the Perseus meteor shower is ongoing right now, but it's going to peak from September 5th to the 21st. So the Lord is highlighting that constellation, and I believe for the reason of the waymaker and breaker coming, we're going to be unshackled and liberated and lifted up into the throne room. I hope. So the blood moon tetrad and the 2021 eclipse midpoint. September 6-7, that is the exact midpoint between the polar two solar eclipses, one on the North Pole, that is already behind us, the second on the South Pole, or rather the outer ring of the enclosed Earth. So it depends on which model of the Earth you are upholding. So September 6th and 7th is exactly 88.5 days, which is the midpoint of the 177 days in between these two eclipses. And we know that the number 88 points to Jesus Christ. So this day was also marked by the 2014 and 15 blood moon tetrad, stressing the importance of the time frame in between Passover and Sukkot. And the blood moon tetrads were marked accurately on the Hebrew calendar and on Torah calendar. So for this reason, we know that the Lord is also using this, or actually these calendars, especially to reference to the Jewish people. So what my understanding is that the Lord uses different calendar systems toward different people groups. And there are calendar systems which are based on Leviticus 23. We have a Spica Abib calendar, and we have biblical solar calendars, equinox based, and they differ roughly a month or a little bit less. It's my understanding that for us, for the Bride of Christ, the Essene solar calendar is most accurate, but I know the Lord uses the others too. And what I understand is that the pictures underneath the calendar, so the lessons he presents to us in the harvest feast, in the cycles, if we learn these lessons, the calendars will take us to the appointed times, and they will help us prepare spiritually toward the Lord's coming. And I think the latter message is the most important one. So the Passover Sukkot time frame of the early harvest, and then the fruit harvest in between, and then the oil harvest at the end. That's what we covered in the last videos too. That was marked on Torah calendar and the Hebrew calendar. And there's a video linked within the article. I'm going to link it in the description box as well, because Brother Brian Christine actually found that midpoint of the blood moon tetrad. And I'm going to give him the credit for that and a recommendation for you to watch his video on the topic. So I propose that judgment could fall on the state of Israel's Feast of Trumpets. So on their day of judgment and the awakening blast, that is what the Feast of Trumpets is known as to them. Effectively turning their fall feasts into mourning. And we read about that prophecy in Amos 8:10. Waking them up spiritually. So for the left behind, our departure, and especially the departure of the children in Christ, those up to 19 who are safe in Christ, that will wake the world up, not just believers, but people worldwide. We may also expect the raising of the dead in Christ first, of course, before the bridal departure. We read about that in Ephesians 5:14. And the awakening of those who are slumbering, the wayward believers, and those who are still spiritually asleep, the unsaved. We can read about that in various locations, one of them being 1 Corinthians 14:46. So the book of Ephesians has many references to the Feast of Trumpets and the High Holy Days. For instance, in Ephesians 4:30, being sealed unto the day of redemption in an annual sense, that refers to Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. And for the bride, the Feast of Trumpets resonates with our day of departure. We can understand from the annual feast cycle that while judgment will fall on the Feast of Trumpets, and we know that our works will be tried by fire, we will not be, but our works will be. It will be sealed until the closing of the gates on the Day of Atonement. The Feast of Trumpets is also associated with the last trump we are waiting for, which is the trumpet voice of God calling us up, as well as with the coronation and the enthronement of the king. And that is the first scene we read about in Revelation 4. So the Revelation 4 open door is set before the bride, just like the bride is going to go underneath the rod in Cancer into the eastern gate, the door of Jerusalem. And the Feast of Trumpets also matches the Giza secret of the stairs. And you can read more about that in the article. I don't have the time to cover everything right now. And there's also an outline on the Feast of Trumpets, which is much more detailed than what I'm able to give to you here. That is below in the article. So the timing of the celestial alignment in Virgo, Leo, and Taurus this weekend, that corresponds with the account of David being gone from the enemy's table during their new moon celebrations, as he is called home by his elder brother for an unspecified yearly feast. And I've been looking for that feast for a long time, but that could very well be the Pentecost Feast of New Oil, the Pentecost fully come, immediately followed by the week-long celebration of the wood offerings. So, if accurate, the prophetic timing would also match with the vision of the Swedish boy of a gathering in Giza, final warnings to be issued, and a subsequent worldwide rapture. So my conclusion with regard to the findings, this is not a thus saith the Lord, it is just me presenting this to you for your consideration and a recommendation to be a Berean yourself. But I understand this weekend's harvest and birthing alignment that speaks of the moon entering into the door of the heavenly Jerusalem as a faithful witness, and that could start the end times harvest, marked by Leo's sickle and the moon's role, the bride's role, not just as a gleaner unto the harvest, but as an end times harvest worker as well. And meanwhile, the beloved bride type, like David, Venus, the planet Venus was crowned during the Christ angle alignment when it conjuncted with Regulus. That is going to be birthed out of Virgo, closely followed by the wise virgins marked by the asteroid Vesta. So let us take a look once again at all the visuals. The moon from the constellation Cancer into the constellation of Leo. Same picture. The moon crossing the line indicating the birthing of the upper into the lower body and conjuncting with the star Spica. And Vesta is right behind. The asteroid dwarf planet, Sirius, is in the field in between the congregated believers in the forehead of Taurus the bull. And Taurus is representing the Lord coming down to both rescue and judge. The alignment of Sirius is really interesting because that tracks back to Giza also. It aligns exactly with the belt stars of Orion and the eye of the hawk. The coming prince, Jesus as Prince of Peace, aligns exactly with the belt stars of Orion and the dwarf planet Sirius. And in the next video, I'm going to cover the new findings of the blood moon tetrad and the eclipses, as well as this amazing picture of Shiloh gathering the bride.